Welcome to this week's episode of the Dublin to Denver podcast. We are in April. It is draft month and regular, proper football, which is what Stuart and I really enjoy talking about the most. It's still so far away. But we will endeavor to look under the hood of the car, I should say, for listeners in America, and see what we can uncover from the Denver Broncos this week. And to do that, I am joined by my friend, colleague, and co-host Stuart Roach. Stuart, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, Colum. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Dublin, which makes a very pleasant surprise. I'd imagine if you were to listen back on the podcast episodes over the last year, there's probably a handful of times you've heard us say that at the very outset, so we should be thankful. Not going to lie, Colum, I don't envy you being the anchor on this one today because there isn't a huge amount of news. The only news that I can really think of, apart from some of the stuff that came out of the owners' meetings, was the which I assumed immediately was an April Fool's article about Aaron Rodgers coming to the Denver Broncos, but then it was people were at pains to say no, this actually wasn't. That the Broncos should bring in Aaron Rodgers for their 1 year window they had with the Super Bowl, and he'd be an upgrade on Bo Nix. And I did check the timeline of the story and all that kind of stuff, because as people, not enough people seem to know, Colin, that April Fool's jokes can only take place before noon, or else you are the fool. So I think that there seems to be a little bit of a lack of knowledge around that. There's sort of the mythology of April Fools, and I think that needs to be reintroduced. So all these people were playing tricks on us. So yeah, no, that's all I've got. So go Broncos. This is what we have. No, look, these, Colin, I suppose, especially given the fact that we traded away our first rounder, which we're not going to rewrite history here. We were both delighted that the Waddle trade was made, and I think Jalen Waddle instantly is an upgrade on just about anything that you could get in the first round, particularly when you think about where the Broncos are picking. But it does kind of diminish a little bit some of the interest in the draft, Colin. Let's be brutally honest. Now, given how badly burnt I was in particular last year, some would say that that's not a bad thing. So they don't have to listen to me banging on about mock drafts again. And believe you me, there are not going to be any mentions of them. But yeah, it does mean that this time of year is probably a little less exciting for Broncos fans than it would be for others. But that's, I think, because we're in such a good, strong position. And, in fairness, the roster is pretty well loaded, apart from the one or two positions that we have some concerns about, which ironically are exactly the same positions we had concerns about this time last year. But if the price we have to pay, Colin, for a Denver Broncos roster that is amongst the very, very best in the NFL, if the price we have to pay is a quiet April, then hey, I am willing to pay it, and I think you probably are too.
I am, and I think that any sort of QB drama is just absolutely ridiculous. I think that while it may not have been April Fools, I think that what you're talking about certainly is trying to drive ratings at a point where there isn't a whole lot happening, and we live in an age where people desperately need to generate clicks and links. And I think it's easy to do that when Rodgers is a free agent, and when I think, especially in the national media, despite Bo Nix showing time and time again that he is the QB for the Denver Broncos, I think because the national media had such negative Bo Nix takes prior to the draft, and a number of pundits have been unwilling to move off of that. I think outside of Broncos country, Stuart, there can be a feeling that Bo Nix isn't a good QB. He hasn't been a good QB for the Broncos, and somehow the Broncos' success is in spite of Bo Nix, despite the fact that we spent many years, right, with pretty decent defenses, maybe not always at the level that we see now, but pretty decent defenses. But because the QB play was so horrible, we were terrible. And in it's always fascinating to see, I suppose, the maybe the vast gaping chasm that exists between um, the um, the reality of what's going on and the media perception. And the media perception can be different when it's both in terms of positive and negative, and both local and national. But I think that's where it was one that Florio could put out there around Aaron Rodgers. He could float it. He knew there wasn't a whole lot happening. So the infamous thing, the political trick of put a story out there and get them to deny it, and then you can report on the denial. So it gives you a whole kind of 24 hours of it. What caught my eye? We'll delve into a little bit deeper. But what caught my eye from the owners' meeting was, and I don't know if you got to see this, and I'm going to put it up on the screen so hopefully you can see it. Those listening won't, but there's a photo from the owners meeting, and it's Sean Payton kind of holding court around the great and good of the Denver media. Mike Kliss is there, our good friend Troy Rank, Andrew Mason, Brandon Kirstal. But just in the corner, as he is in every single picture where Sean Payton is featured, and I'm just going to say, is one P. Smythe, Patrick S. Stewart. There are DBs across the league that wish they had the sort of coverage skills that Patrick Smythe has, because he is touch tight. He tracks his man. He never lets him out of his sight. And no matter where Sean Payton goes, Patrick Smythe is there. That was my takeaway from the owners' meeting.
So you're effectively saying that we should sort of rename sort of the great PR press relations officers Smythe Island, the sort of reminiscent of Darrell Revis or the Champ Bailey of press access. Colin, when you put that up, it's the picture's not unreminiscent of the infamous and utterly laughable photograph of the deeply Christian president of the United States of America, and I say that with as much cynicism as one human being can possibly muster, surrounded by all these evangelicists who decided to leave their morals at the door. It's not dissimilar to that. Obviously Sean Payton's a far more likable individual than the aforementioned Agent Orange, but yeah, like, fair play. That is the kind of lockdown coverage that I think secondaries, even those with nicknames, like the No Fly Zone or the Legion of Boom, these guys would be proud of that kind of coverage. So hey, listen, Colin, we may not like it at times. We're almost certainly going to sort of feel some kind of legal action at some point down the road. You'd have to imagine that, given the tentacles that are almost H.P. Lovecraftian in their reach, we will pay for your regular outbursts in this. I'd just like to say, because my lawyers are in the background telling me to try and get my defense in early, but hey, you have to hold your hands up. We may not like it, but damn good at what he does. And
and we're only giving the man praise here. I mean, we're comparing him to Champ Bailey, to Revis, to the defenses that had nicknames. I mean, this is a guy, when they start putting up photographs of the Purple People Eaters or the Iron Curtain or the No Fly Zone, they're going to have to start showing pictures of Patrick Smythe. We're admiring him. If anything, I think surely it's hilarious to me that it's both a testament of how good he is at his job and that he doesn't get talked about, but equally, when somebody is as good as at their job, surely they deserve the accolades that should be going in their direction. So that was one piece I thought that was just humorous, and I didn't see it get picked up in a lot of places. The other,
Yeah, but for very good reason. Yes, stealth assassin, folks, stealth assassin. You know,
I,
it's reminiscent of sort of John le Carre and his great hero George Smiley, who was the sort of the antithesis to Ian Fleming and James Bond, because you know, as anybody who has any interest in spycraft will tell you, it's not the tall, handsome, debonair gentleman who's going to make the best spy. It's this sort of crumpled, nondescript chap that you just completely ignore. He's the one who's pulling the strings. And you know, I'm in no way comparing Pete Smythe to George Smiley. And you know, and I'm not making any kind of sort of reference to Denver Broncos media access and the Cold War in the 60s. I'm not doing that, and I think it's important, and it's very important that is on the record, because I you know, I don't know how much longer this podcast can exist in its current form, given what's coming down the line. But hey, look, as long as we can make it through to next season, and look, you know, it might be best if the Broncos win a Super Bowl, Colum. It might be best for us sort of to get out while the going's good before we're sued to oblivion.
I just wonder, will the next hosts, you know, when we inevitably just disappear, will
They'll
they
be handpicked.
will they
Don't you
replace
worry.
us with two Americans like Brad and Chad, or will they go like down the Irish route and have like Seamus and Patrick, uh, who are you know, two caricatures? We shall see. But you're not going to get this content, let me tell you, on any other Denver Broncos podcast or broadcast. No one else is delving in to the what's actually going on. But if you have not seen the photo, listeners, do seek it out because it is worth your time. The other thing, Stuart, that came out of the owners' meeting was Sean Payton telling us now. I always say take everything with a truckload of salt, but Sean Payton telling us that Jonah Ellis is going to take snaps at inside linebacker, you know. And so the great inside linebacker issue continues, and the Denver Broncos continue to like to try to move players around, which is all very well when, you know, you're talking about pee-wee football. I think that's fantastic. Doesn't tend to work so well in the NFL. I mean, you know, there are you know, some notable examples, but they tend to be the exceptions that prove the rule, and they tend to be guys going from cornerback to safety.
Yeah, I've got so many problems with this column. I think Jonah Ellis is a fine rotational piece. I think people have started to lose their mind on Q Robinson a little bit because he had a sack in the divisional round game. Q Robinson has flashed occasionally, but you know, Ellis is in my opinion is a much more rounded and a much more promising pass rusher. And I if we were really happy with the inside linebacker room, Colin, would we be moving one of our edge rushers and putting him in positions to take snaps? No, I don't think we would. And there's all sorts of stuff kind of coming out about, you know, oh, this is, you know, a really good utilization of the resources that we have, because you need to get a guy like Ellis on the field more. The fact that Cooper and Benito are so good means that his snaps are going to go down, blah, 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 blah. It's all nonsense. It's all BS. You know, draft an inside linebacker, sign an inside linebacker. Don't, I look, maybe it's just off-season talk, Colin, and it's the kind of thing that we, you know, when we get down to it, the chances are, I actually don't really believe that you're going to see much of Jonah Ellis at inside linebacker. You might see him maybe in the role that they envision for Sanders, who unfortunately just is perpetually injured. The one thing about Sanders is, and Sanders was highly rated coming out of college, Colin. Let's not forget. I think he was the second highest ranked middle linebacker in the draft that year. One of the things that Sanders had, which is kind of a unique part of a skill set, was that he was really good blitzing from inside linebacker. Maybe that's what they think they might be able to get from Ellis. But I would counter that by saying that Justin Strnad showed excellent ability to rush the passer from inside linebacker last year. So I just don't get it. Fix the inside linebacker room. I mean, what's next? Putting little Jordan Humphrey at tight end? He's a bigger bodied wide receiver. No, just draft a tight end, man. It's not that hard. Jesus. Like, look, earlier on in the podcast, Colin, I was saying the Broncos do have one of the best rosters in the NFL, and they do, and there's no point in even sort of trying to argue with that. Facts are, it is legitimate, and we have one of those, but it's not perfect. It's not filled. There are aspects, like every roster in the NFL, given the way things is constituted now. Every roster has flaws. That's fine. We're not unique in that regard, but we have a lot fewer than most. But we still have some flaws. We still have some parts of the team that need to be fixed. Inside linebacker, tight end, and running back, it all still could use a little bit of work. So, I heard it. I tried to ignore it. Then you sent me repeated messages, which means I couldn't ignore it. And it kind of drove me a little bit mad. Not blaming you, of course, but I just, it just smacks of sort of throwing a dart, and hopefully it'll sort of hit the bullseye. I would be very surprised if we saw it, because I think Jonah Ellis, he's still, what is he, going into year 3 now, Colin? He's still got time to develop. He's had some injury issues, that's true. But you can never have enough good outside pass rushes, Colin. So I don't see why you would potentially diminish one of the real strengths of the room by putting him in somewhere else when there's perfectly good opportunities to fix the thing. Elsewhere, there's still some moves you can make in free agency. There's still some players are probably going to release after the draft. There's still the draft. It's a good year for inside linebackers, Colin. We still have a pick in the second round. We still got 2 fourth-round picks. So, there's some capital there. It's not like we have no money left to play with. It's not like we've no draft picks, and it's not like there's nobody in free agency. There are solutions out there to these problems. I don't know. I just kind of felt Sean Payton bored or something that he decided to come out with this stuff, because it didn't make a huge amount of sense to me. As you said, yes, it has linebacker in the title. But a lot of the time, these kind of positional changes, they occur because a player might be slowing down a little bit. So you might get a cornerback going to safety. I'm sure there are examples of outside pass rushers being transitioned into middle linebackers, and it was a success, but there's not that many, Colin. Far more often it probably doesn't happen. Or the reality is the chances are it doesn't happen at all, because people like to leave players in their specialist position. So I don't envisage seeing very many snaps for Jonah Ellis at inside linebacker. I think he should be left where he is.
Yeah, I would like to see him left there. I'm generally not a fan of it in any way, shape, or form. I think, as I mentioned, the history of it is like failure 98% of the time, and it just does not tend to work. We do seem to like to do it, and it feels, Stuart, a bit like the draft picks that are made, right, where there's all of the excitement, right, about sometimes the 6th and 7th round guys and what they could go on to become. And occasionally, you end up hitting on one where it really does work late on, right? But for every Shannon Sharp, there are Tyree Clevelands or Mooties or Chad Kellys, and so I don't see it. I think even at the highest level, right, where you look at what the Jaguars did. They drafted a superstar out of Colorado, who listeners will be very familiar with, who played both ways to a very high level in college, and they've realized that is not doable in the NFL. It is too specialized, and you need to be absolutely exceptional. I think maybe maybe in years gone by, it was potentially more possible to do it. I think that's the case that you see in sports. Like if we go all the way back, Stuart, you think that there, certainly in an Irish context, there were guys playing Gaelic football and playing soccer, or there were guys playing hurling and Gaelic football. That wasn't all that uncommon. And you hear occasionally, obviously, about guys coming through in the draft. John Elway probably being the example above all examples, but we know Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray both played baseball as well. Eventually you have to choose, and I think that's ultimately what we will see. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to chat about today? I don't know if you wanted to go into some of the owners' comments or really. I don't think there isn't a huge amount for us to cover this week.
No, there was a couple of little snippets, Colin. I think Bo Nix is ahead of schedule, which is great, and his rehab is going well. I guess a cynical person would say if Bo Nix's rehab was going terribly, we probably wouldn't hear hearing about it. But it does sound like he's on the right track, and he should be fine for OTAs, which is a very good sign. Just know the Broncos brass were saying, just the team leaders, the sort of the seasoned pros were very, very excited about the Jalen Waddle trade, and rightly so. Because I think this is something that we don't have to blow up, Colin, because I think it speaks for itself. But just the likes of Nix and Surtain and people like that apparently were really excited. Nix in particular was screaming with joy when he heard that this might have happened. And Penner said there are times when Bo Nix is who they all love, but Bo Nix seems to be sort of auditioning for the part of next GM, given the kind of input he likes to have in these kind of decisions. But it seems like Nix in particular, as you would imagine, is incredibly excited to have a playmaker like Waddle on the team. So apart from that, Colin, I don't think there was a huge amount else. I think that, as I said earlier on, we're kind of in a real quiet time before we get closer to the draft. And, there might be bits and bobs happening around the draft, Colin. We do still have some decent amount of cash. And as I said, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if after the draft we go about fixing one of those positions. And there was a little bit of noise, Colin, this week that the reason why Cam Jordan hasn't signed with the team yet is that the Broncos are looking to kind of get him after the draft finishes. So I wouldn't be hugely surprised if he was brought in. As I said, I know he's getting on a lot, but he still is a productive pass rusher. Great character in the dressing room by all accounts, a Sean Payton guy, and would help replace some of the experience and pass rush ability we lost with Franklin Myers, because Ezwariki and Savion Jones might be highly regarded amongst the Broncos locker room and amongst the powers that be, but they're just not at the same level as a player like Franklin Myers. And I think it's such an important position, D-line, when it comes to sort of disrupting the pocket, that you kind of it's a fine balance between trying to develop your own players but also having a high caliber talent on the team. And I would expect Cam Jordan to be a Denver Bronco probably come May. And again, if anybody knows anything about this podcast, look forward to Cam Jordan signing for the Chargers, probably on Monday. So
6 minutes after this podcast goes live. The only other thing, and not really newsworthy, but was Dre Greenlaw talking, I suppose, in depth about his year with the Broncos, which Sean Payton talked about him as well during the week, and his passion for the game and stuff. But I didn't think the interview, came across. It was, to me, right, because he was talking about how he moved across and his trainer was telling him how different the Broncos do stuff and how he found that affected him. So I thought that was that, to me, Stuart, like, because the 49ers injury record kind of speaks for itself. So I thought
Pretty
that
sure for himself.
I just Sheriff is getting in on this. I just thought that it was an interesting piece where he kind of went into how he felt that the Broncos, it read to me that he seemed to be blaming the intensity of the work the Broncos were doing on him getting injured, and that in turn kind of messing up the season. And he talked about not being happy. And I just think if you look at the Broncos, certainly over the last 3 years since Peyton came in, J.K. Dobbins won't like it, but outside of Dobbins and a freak injury to Bo Nix, certainly our injuries are significantly down. I mean, you only have to go back to, and nobody in Denver media wanted to touch this, but I remember Shelby Harris making the comment when he was here at one stage during a season. We were in December, and this would have been Shelby probably in year 6 or 7. He'd been around the league a while. He said, I've never seen anything like this. We'd so many guys out with various muscle strains of all sorts at the time, which was interesting. And that was the piece that I thought was interesting. Look, I hope it's just a piece for Greenlaw. He clearly is a passionate guy. You'd like to see him do well. Obviously, really unfortunate to have that major injury in the Super Bowl when he's just coming onto the field. And hopefully he can get back up to where he needs to get to. But look, at this point, I think Stuart and I will be back next week to delve into whatever bag of tricks we have to find, as long as Patrick Smythe has not.
We might be. That all depends, Colum.
I am not the one who compared him to a character from John le Carre's novels. So
the compliments.
You remember that?
Compared it to George Smiley, not to Carla. Now that would have been an insult.
You remember that, Patrick S. When the time comes.
Hey, when the time comes, the last person who's going to know about it is going to be me.
We like the end of The Sopranos. Everything just goes dark. But you can find Stuart over on Blue Sky, SRoach123. I'm across social media at Colum from Cork. If you enjoy the podcast, please do rate, review, subscribe, or better yet, just tell a friend about us at the Dublin to Denver podcast. All that remains to be said at this point is go Broncos.
Go Broncos.